And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of Show Me the Money, our Friday program here on LIBRadio, LIBTV, and on livinginblack.com. Fridays, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. BST, and 8 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Friday. It is the 8th day of August, 2025 in the Western calendar. That's 6266 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIBRadio, LIBTV, here on livinginblack.com. And let me welcome in my co-host for the program today, joining us as she does every week, Dr. Steph, or actually every other week, Dr. Steph. I have you in the house. How are you doing today, my beloved queen sister?
I'm excited to be with you as always, Kitty. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually having a Renaissance time. You know about Las Vegas in August.
Woo-hoo.
It gets hot.
Oh, I'm so grateful to not be there. Lord, Father God, I was giving thanks. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I give thanks. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you are definitely in the right place in Jamaica. Well, it's hot over here. It's now approaching 110 degrees every day. So it's that time of the year. We'll suffer through another month and a week or two of this. But you are in Jamaica. Where are you today?
Today I'm in Kingston. I'm at a beautiful coffee shop called Brewed Awakenings. And I took the chance to come down into the city to make sure that hopefully we would have stable internet and I wouldn't be midstream making a point and suddenly disappear. So, here's to, being better connected and being able to get through our program and not lose any facts in the journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jamaica nice. We're going to continue today our series. You have planned a 5-part series on funding the Kujichagulia villages. Talk to us about this series, and this will be part 3 of this series.
Absolutely. So just for those of you who are just joining in, we started off really our first session. We talked about setting a clear vision and then understanding what it was we wanted and what would need funding. So we went through that in segment 1. Then we moved on to segment 2, where we started talking about how to fund it. What are some of the funding options? What different sources of capital exist out there in the marketplace? Today, we get to drill down a little bit more on how you structure. What are the legal and governmental requirements in order to not only acquire the actual assets, how must they be held? What type of entities do you put those assets in order to perpetuate the activities that you need, as well as what type of capital structures are required in order to finance those intentions and outcomes? And where does one begin with preparing the legal due diligence requirements, as well as understanding who has jurisdiction over those particular physical assets, where they are based, and then also globally. So I think we're in for an exciting conversation where we get an opportunity to just think about those particular details so that ultimately we can build upon this vision. Our next sessions that follow, we'll talk more about what type of lessons we can glean from others. And then finally, we'll end up with specific calls to action.
And when we, when we talk about these in the long run, in the long term, putting them together, we do have the experiences of intentional communities to draw upon. I take it that in your research in this, you've come across this term intentional communities more than one time.
Yes, yes and no. So yes, in the sense of communities are intentional. No, in the sense that my focus has been on market rate development in communities that exist globally. So when you talk about, my level of focus has been both directing governments as
Mm-hmm.
well as developing within urban infill communities, as well as communities that were adjacent to those communities and maybe required a little bit more infrastructure. But my primary focus has been developing in built spaces. So coming in and recreating communities. So whereas some people come in and they focus on maybe their house on a block, I come in and build the block.
Mm-hmm. All right. And for those unfamiliar with the term intentional communities, a quick definition: intentional communities are small, voluntary social units where members share a common lifestyle and economic union, often aiming to implement their ideological, religious, political, social, economic, and educational systems. So these can take various forms, from eco villages to, in our case, a cultural library or a cultural repository, etc. Intentional communities is the overall theme. There is a website, I think it's just intentionalcommunities.com. It might be ic.com. But I do encourage our listening audience, if you've heard us talking about Kujichagulia villages, do look up the history of intentional communities. There's a lot of precedents there, including the funding of the intentional communities that we can draw upon.
Absolutely. I think that's the main thing is beginning with the end in mind. And so this is where oftentimes people who may not see or feel the vision as much in the beginning, because some people wait until it's finished before they realize they should have been part of the process of creating it. When it comes down to the last second, it's like, oh, okay, I have an idea now. It's like, well, that's a little late, because the capital is based on the early ideas. And so if you want to have capital, you must be able to formulate the early vision and begin to illustrate it on paper through images, quantifying it, and then also being able to determine what it is, how it comes to fruition, and what it costs. At the end of the day, you're talking about labor, materials, and capital.
Mm-hmm. All right. And bear with me. I don't know why I get a little scratchy in the throat today, but we're going to get through it, no doubt. And so let's begin to unwrap this. Let's go into part 3 on putting these intentional communities together.
Exactly. So one of the things that you had shared with me, Kitty, early on is that, for example, in a couple of the countries that we're considering, you've already been given land. Let's talk about what you know about that land. Who are the current owners of that land? How is that land held? And what is the current use of that land? What can you tell us?
No, Daddy be right back.
I can't hear you, so you might be on mute. Did you go on mute? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay. The best example that we have is Ghana. And we also have examples of Nigeria, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, and Kenya, where the model has been laid out. There have been people in those areas that have received the idea of the model and they like it. They want to go for it. And as a consequence of that, we have people inside of those countries that can help us to secure the land. But the one that's the most further along is Ghana. Ghana is, of course, the country that launched the year of return. in 2019, where Ghana reached out to diasporans of all nationalities around the world to come home to Ghana. For various reasons, they saw it to their advantage. Bring your skills, your talents, your resources, bring your investment capital. And so in Ghana, very specifically, I have an associate, his name I'll just leave out for right now. I have an associate there who has large plots of land in the Akosombo region along the Volta River, where the dam is located in the eastern part of Ghana. And he has offered up 500 acres. Now, that is one of several offers from Ghana, but that's the one very specifically I'm going to begin working on when I arrive in Ghana later this fall. So 500 acres. The acres is very lovely land. I mean, we have numerous examples in Ghana. There is Fihankra. There is also the Ghana Hemp Association, which has received a mandate from the government to go ahead and grow industrial hemp so that Ghana can spark up its industrial hemp industry. So we have a number of different examples. Ghana is a great example.
Okay, perfect. So now we're talking about 500 acres. So
Mm-hmm.
500 acres. What is the current title on those acres?
The title, as far as I'm aware, it's privately held. So my
Okay,
concept
so the
in moving
person
it
is able
forward,
to sell. The person is able to sell those 500 acres to another entity.
right. Now, the entity in selling the land, we have to make sure that it's sold and 51% majority partnership will be to Ghanaian citizenry or a trust that's been set up legally in Ghana.
Okay, so these are the things that began to create the envelope around the land. So now
Mm-hmm.
that you know two facts, one, you know that 51% of the ownership must be retained by the Ghanaians in some particular way. Now, is this person that currently has the 500 acres, is that person looking to stay in as that 51% partner in this community development effort?
Oh, yes, no doubt. He will be a major part of that organizing on the Ghanaian side. And so, yes, that's the answer.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. So beyond the land, is that 51% partner able to also bring in labor, materials, and capital towards the development project?
The expectation is that we will take responsibility from the position of the 49%. We will take responsibility for land, labor, for the labor costs and the other utility costs of building the village. Um, as you know, African Americans, we have a lot of money, but unfortunately, we don't use our money for autonomous efforts. This is now moving us into that whole arena.
Okay. So then that being said, in what you've stated has given me a couple things that let me know a path forward. One, when you're the minority owner in a venture, then you do not have controlling decision making in that particular venture. Okay. So you are not going to be able to bring capital to a venture where you lack the majority control when it's other people's money per se, just per se, right? You're going to have to structure individual ownership.
Okay, we are live and direct with Dr. Steph. Today is Friday, the 8th of August,
Within
and
that
this is our Friday program.
49,
Okay, we got you back.
a
Sorry about it.
particular.
You dropped out for a minute.
All right. Okay. So you're going to identify, say, within the 500 acres, the first, maybe, say you're starting with 20 acres that you're going to develop master plan. Within that 20 acres, as you've designated the various uses, then you want to bring in ownership, people who are willing to pre-purchase their interests, either it be in a lot, in a home that they want to have developed, in a business that they want to have established. Those are going to be your first early contributors to help you begin with the first 15% of equity that is necessary to fuel the development of the project. Okay.
Okay.
And so, in that, then depending upon those particular individuals, their funding can be combined in what's called a special purpose vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon where it is they're located. But just for sake of argument, I'm going to say that everybody's coming in from out the US, or there's enough people from the US that it requires us to understand the US structure, right? Because we want to take
Mm-hmm.
resources from the US to another country. So we want to
That's
set
right.
up a special purpose vehicle that allows us to begin to collect and aggregate those resources and then allocate them towards particular efforts, right? So once we say, if we start with this idea that we're going to develop the first 20 acres as a master planned mixed use community, this community would become sustaining, self-sustaining. So we've already discussed earlier what the needs are in that community. We know that that community needs to be able to house itself, to feed itself, to heal itself, to educate itself, right? And to provide economic uh, opportunities within itself. So those are the things that the community is looking to accomplish. And then it'll be programmed with that intention in mind. So now what we need to do is begin to understand what is the budget necessary to develop that first 20 acres, right? And from this
Mm-hmm.
budget, now we know that the first 15% is the equity that we must bring into this special purpose vehicle to begin the work, because there's upfront work that has to be done that far precedes anything else. Meaning, right now, the first thing that you need is a clear understanding of who the developer is. And I would say, when you're talking about a master plan community, you want to identify what's considered a master developer who's going to oversee the entire development. And then within that master plan, what the master developer will end up doing is creating what we call merchant builders around certain use types, so that the best builders are able to build the specific pieces. But the master developer is overseeing the master plan. And so the master plan requires a different type of architecture, MEPs, and all of those elements to develop that plan, because you're developing the entirety. Then you start within that entirety, breaking off different uses and identifying who the best builders are based upon the end program that you're seeking to execute with those various uses, right? And who are the end benefactors. So if I know that I want to have a home in the Pujalia village, right? Then we need to kind of have a general idea of what the home options are. Maybe there are three different pricing ranges of homes. Maybe it's by acres. Maybe it starts off with a small parcel is 5 acres or 1 acre. A larger is 5 acres. An ultimate, if we're only doing 20 acres, you probably wouldn't do more than 1 to say 3 acre sites initially, in terms of how you're subdividing these particular sites. Or maybe you start off with 100 acres. Again, it's all about the math and how much you can garner in terms of early commitments. So what you're going to begin to need is to put together this rough budget of what some of the infrastructure costs are, and begin to get commitments where people are voting with their name and their dollars that, yes, I'm willing to put this towards this particular outcome. So right now it would be putting money towards having a lot, all right, and what the cost of having that lot have the necessary infrastructure. So those are the first folks that are probably in. And then at the point that all of the community has been designed in terms of the master plan, those lots now have value. So the persons that paid for their lots could also decide if they actually want to build on their lot, or if they want to sell now this entitled, ready to go with infrastructure lot to another buyer that wants to take it at that point and pay for the construction and building on that particular site. But in that, the community guidelines and all of those things have to establish a time frame for those buyers that you must build within a certain timeline, because we don't want the community to be partially built, decades later because somebody bought a lot but did not invest in the next phase of building out that particular lot.
Okay. Now, the model that I hear you laying out is not consistent with the model of intentional communities that I have been building this idea of Kujichagulia villages around. Let me just real quickly, I'm going to take you to a website, and I'll put up the link for those in the listening audience as well. It's entitled Intentional, it's ic.org, Intentional Communities. And this is a directory of the intentional communities that are part of ic.org as they are listed. They're listed in alphabetical order. Alabama has 7 of them, Alaska 4, Arizona 14, Arkansas 5, California 101 intentional communities, Colorado 32, Connecticut 4. That's just A through C. Now, let's go specifically to California, and we have a bunch of them, 101 of them. Just a few, I'll list just 5. Ingenium Sanctuary of Loving Awareness, 20 Mish, Alethea Springs, Alt Terra Commons, and Ami G Echo Village. So the point that I'm making is, it sounds to me like you are working on the model that you're experienced with, which is the development of building communities. What's the word I'm going to say? Almost like gated communities, like we're used to in the West. But the idea of Kujichagulia villages, if I could put it any simpler way, these are more like modern day versions of hippie communes.
So it doesn't matter what it is. The structure is, it all requires labor, materials, and capital.
That's right.
I don't care what you're doing. It all requires labor, capital, and materials. And there must be a structure to get those labor, capital, and materials. If you already have all the resources that you need in your bank account, then all you need to do is start putting together your team to begin to lay out and design your community. If it is that you don't have those things, then you need to begin to create ways for those things to come into fruition. Unless you're saying that, hey, everybody, put in your money in this village, and then show up with your tent and your, stake, camping out on the land, and you're responsible for clearing the portion of the land so that you can find a place to set up. And yes, that can happen too. But how are the resources put in place to make sure that there's water, there's power, there's some type of sewage, there's functionality within that particular community?
Mm-hmm.
Those communities that you're citing off, somebody took the leadership in financing those communities into existence. And they had to be structured in some way for that financing to happen. What I'm talking about is how you make something get from a thought and a conversation to a completed existing whatever it is.
Yes, I
If
do
you go and
definitely
pull up
agree.
the, go pull the paperwork on each of those communities that you're talking about, and get back and
Mm-hmm.
tell me what's the legal structure, how is the land held, what is the name of the entity, how was it financed, who financed it, how did the money get in order for those communities to exist.
Right. I just wanted to let our audience know that this model of intentional communities is very well established. It's established all over the world. We can find intentional communities in the European countries, etc. And we, as African people, should not be afraid to take on this task because it's already in motion for the benefit of other people.
Kitty, intentional communities exist right now every day in Jamaica. I was just having a conversation with someone earlier. Families have land. They refer to it as their yard. And they have enough land, oftentimes, for several members of their family to each build. And so they either, if they're building vertically, the parents build the first level of the property. The next kid builds the second layer level of the property. The next kid builds the next layer of the property. And the intention behind it is making sure that the family members all have housing and infrastructure that they know for the next set of generations they can live and exist. They also, if they don't go vertical, they use this similar model to each person build a home within their yard, which may be 10 acres, 20 acres of land that the family has as their estate. It's not unique because it's intentional. Every community that exists came out of some intention, or they wouldn't exist. Somebody had the intention and then determined what structure for that intention that they wanted to utilize. So I'm wanting to make sure that you don't get caught up in confusing people with so-called the intention that you've set about this particular community. I'm not speaking, I don't care what the intention is in terms of it all requires an intention. Now, what is the best structure to execute to fulfill that intention is what needs to be determined at this particular point.
The thing is, though, what you're describing in Jamaica, these are family holdings, etc. Did they go through the structure that you're describing today to put all that together?
They did it with their own family co-ops. Yes. Individually, they've decided that we want to build this out for our family and our legacy, and each person works to bring the capital. We have the builders that we want to use. Some of it is self-built. Some of it is we're hiring other people. But I'm going to go and work and make my money, and I'm going to send my money back to contribute to the building. It would be similar in your mind, unless you believe that the community of benefactors are all up and moving to Ghana, and they're all retired and they're wealthy individuals, and they're pulling money from their 401ks to pay for their moving to Ghana on their piece of land. If it is that any of those people still need to generate the revenues necessary to invest in their Ghanaian homes as part of this community, then they need to have an ecosystem that they're drawing from. And they also need to have a way to funnel those funds into that ecosystem so that it can be deployed to begin building out the infrastructure and all of the requirements for that village to come into existence.
Okay, let's go back. Let's just backstep a little bit. Let's put together the financing.
Okay. So the financing goes together. I've asked you about the title. I've asked you about the holding. So now what is the legal structure that we're looking to hold the assets in? That's how we get the financing. Financing comes following the legal structure based upon whose money it is that's going in. So who do you believe is going to provide you with the resources to build out your vision? Who are those folks that are going to contribute resources to make it happen?
At this particular point, I'll have to kind of hold this under my belt, but it is the group, the African Future, which has been in existence for about 5 years now and is putting together an investment and development fund that will be committed to building the first of the Kujagalia villages. My intention, my vision was that the villages ultimately would be held in trust form by members of the community.
Okay, so in trust form by members of the community, all right, that's fine.
Hmm.
Then have you structured the trust for those members and identified the members of the community who are interested in being part of that trust?
No, no, that has not yet been done.
Okay. The funding source, what is the percentage of the funding that they will commit towards your efforts? Most funding sources do not commit 100% of the funds to any projects because oftentimes their business plan has a restriction as well, their thesis. If they take on 100% of the risk, then it's now their project. And if it's their project, then your people do not have an equity stake, financial stake in their project unless they buy into them. You understand the distinction that happens? Is money goes into a vehicle and then that vehicle executes. And based upon that execution, that determines ownership and then control and then use.
Okay. Again, I'm reluctant to talk about
You don't
the
have to
group.
talk about specific
Mhm.
names. I don't care. I don't need to know the names of the groups to have this conversation with you, by the way. The names are irrelevant. I'm just wanting you to understand the legal structure. What you must know from a group that is a group that says that they're providing funding is what is their requirement, what is their business thesis, what is the purpose of their funding, because that will tell you what their funding is able to provide to what it is you're doing. When you're putting together any type of project, you're putting together a layered capital structure. People will ask you, all right, Kitty, well, what's your capital stack look like? That's what they're asking you, is where are all the sources of the capital coming from, and where do they line up within the stack of capital that's necessary to get you to the finish line? Because one source is not going to be the one source that gets you from the beginning to end unless it's your own money.
Okay, I'm a little confused. May I want to back up and repeat part of that?
Yes. So what happens is when you are working on developing physical or community places that are going to be built spaces, right? Because we're talking about assets, physical assets that are being developed, those physical assets typically have some type of ownership, a legal structure, an individual, something that controls the ownership. The ownership also facilitates the funding, right? How it's owned determines how it can be funded, what those constraints are. The exception to that is if you are a wealthy individual and you have your own money, you can choose to allocate all of your money any way you want to. If you have to seek any input of capital from any other outside source, the only way you can successfully accomplish that is you must understand what are the constraints that those capital sources have. Because if I'm a fund and I'm allocating funds, it is not my personal money. So I can't just allocate it any way that I want to. I had to put together a business plan to have other people put their money into my fund. And that fund dictates how those funds are allocated. So typically, a fund has a life cycle. The funds can only be deployed for 10 years. And then all of those funds that have been deployed must be paid back with the return after 10 years. So that means that that capital has to come in and have a way to be replaced by other capital. That's what a capital stack begins to outline and deploy and explain. And before that capital will commit, it must make sure that you understand we need it back in 10 years with our return. What is the liquidity event that you will be able to create for us to get these resources back? Because it's not our personal money, it's a fund, and a fund has a life cycle.
Okay. All right. I'm a little stumped. Keep going.
Okay, well, just all capital is structured the same way. Is all capital has a purpose. If you're going to present to a family office, if you're going to present to whomever, right, that has capital, the second that you are looking for outside capital for what it is that you're doing, anything that you're doing, you have to understand all of those different sources and what their requirements are. The reason that most people can't get capital is because they go thinking that they're ready to look for capital before they've done this work and developed a structure and understood what sources of capital are necessary to make up the capital stack. So you're designing a village. At the end of the day, the participants in this village want to have ownership. Yes?
Yes.
How is that ownership determined? Is it by units of value? Is it by physical ownership? They want to have a physical place to do business or to physically live. What is the ownership in your mind that this village is able to offer to the participants?
The ownership will be for individual housing. And the purpose of the village, of course, is a village to create something to the larger community of great value. So our
Okay.
villages essentially will be working laboratories as we, the African diaspora, reestablish and reengage ourselves for a motherland continent. Many people do want to contribute a lot. They want to contribute in education, they want to contribute inventions in research and discovery or research and development. They want to contribute their already existing businesses, just expanding into Africa and getting an equity position in Africa's future.
All right. So your first phase is to put together a funding mechanism for people to begin to put their commitments towards first the legal structure necessary for those types of ownership. So you could have a master special purpose vehicle, and each of those individual participants could have their trust. Say they put in place their family trust, and their family trust is the mechanism that they're going to start allocating. So if you have 1,000 people who want to ultimately participate in an ownership opportunity, that 1,000 people are going to set up their own family trust and start allocating the funds that they want. It's their Ghana investment, right? So they start putting their money in the Ghana investment. And then as those 1,000 people come up with the first phase of funds that you need to begin the legal structure and some of these other things, then now you have the start of what you need to begin. Your next effort is to get to Ghana and to finalize if it's a phased acquisition of the 500 acres, or if it is you're taking down the 500 acres in one commitment. However, you and that landowner decide. And that landowner can say, all right, in lieu of you paying me for the acres right now, I'm going to put those acres in a joint venture. So those acres now, we're going to do phase one, for example, and phase one is 100 acres. So we're going to allocate these 100 acres that are identified by this title, and we're going to put them in an LLC, right? And now the acres are part of the LLC. So the LLC has tangible assets that have value. Now we need all of the other pieces to begin to improve upon that condition of those assets and start to increase its value. So phase one is designing the master plan and hiring all the different talent necessary to begin to develop those tangible plans. So it has to be first conceptually developed on paper, and then after it's conceptually developed and figured out on paper, then it has to be determined how it can become buildable on paper, right? If it is that there's going to be physical construction, it goes from a conceptual phase into an actual buildable phase. And usually during the conceptual phase, that's where all the money that you'd say the soft cost, that's usually where the money of the equity is required, is during that soft cost phase. And then also understanding if you're developing land that lacks infrastructure, does the government have resources that they're willing to contribute to some of that infrastructure? Or are you taking on all of the infrastructure cost in totality? And what does that require to build out the infrastructure? Okay. And then now that you have some type of numbers, now you have the ability to determine, all right, my participants in the village, we need to each contribute X towards the infrastructure. And then also we are going to want to own a residence or a business. So then that becomes the Y too. So we have X contribution and Y contribution. And if I want a business, then that's Z contribution, right? So I have these three different areas that my funds, my interest must contribute to in order for us to end up with a village that comes into physical existence.
All right. And was there, I'm sorry, I kind of missed that. I was looking up something in the background.
So I'm saying that to take it from concept to a physical, completed community.
Yeah, take it from a concept to completed community. I will say this much. We can draw upon experience. In the United States, I was just looking up the Foundation for Intentional Communities. And it has a total of 449 listings inside of the United States. The next one on this list is South America. There are 45 intentional communities listed there. The next one, I should say, is Europe. Has 53.
Katie, and you're looking up those communities. Yes, they exist.
Yes, they do exist. So
how are they held?
What I'm
how
saying.
Are they financed to come into existence? We're talking about how you finance to get that. I don't need evidence of them. I know they exist.
Please. Please understand this. This is not going to be easy. Today is not contributing to the development of these intentional communities, of our intentional communities. If you took this set of questions that you've put together that you're asking me. See, I do not live, well, I did grow up in an intentional community. So I got to correct that. I did grow up in an intentional community. There are 449 of them listed for the United States. So the key about it is you would want to ask the questions that you're asking of the founders and the developers of these intentional communities. That's an easy way to get the answers to these questions. Now, I
You
could
would
tell
want
you,
to ask them because you want to create it and you don't know how. So I don't need to ask them. I know how to create it. You don't. You need to ask them. I'm bringing to you the questions that you need to have answers to because it's
okay,
your vision.
that's reasonable. I can accept that. But
Right.
here's the
That's all I'm
thing.
saying. Yeah.
I will be able to answer these questions by studying the creation
Yes.
of these intentional
Yes.
communities. So
Yes.
I
So
kind of
yes.
take it back to the beginning of our conversation when I asked you, do you know the history? Do you study the history? Have you looked up intentional communities? And your response to that was you were unfamiliar with it. Am I correct?
No, my response to you is that that does not have a bearing on if I know how to build a community. I know how to build a community. That's what I've been doing for the last 40 years of my career is building communities. So it doesn't matter the end use of the community. What takes from raw land to a finished developed community. I understand how that happens. I know all the steps within that process. I'm actually a master of that. Its purpose is its program. That's the vision in the beginning. So you want it to be a shared for these particular people. Okay, that's fine. That's all I've been able to do. I know exactly how to do that. You must understand how that is done so that you understand what type of resources you require to get it done. And what I'm explaining to you is that in the beginning, in order to get what you want done, you need to have these types of understanding of what is it that I want to use? How is it that I want to develop that I want to use? What are the resources that I need? I need labor, I need materials, and I need capital to execute. What are the sources of that labor, those materials, and capital that I need to create this in community? Whether the community is designated as a nonprofit village under a co-op, whether the community is designated as a luxury for-profit community, whether the community is designated as a 55, none of those things change the fundamentals. You're trying to say that if I want a Ford truck, that I must understand Ford's mechanisms before I can discuss Isuzu truck or Toyota truck. And I'm telling you that no, to build a truck requires A to Z. You personalize it to your use, but there's a certain structure of if we want to build a truck, we need a manufacturing plant because we're not going to build it in our backyard. And it's the same thing is that, yes, to build a physical space and place has a certain structure and process. It doesn't change based on the use. That just determines who puts money into it. But it doesn't change the process. The process is the
Yeah.
same. And the fact that you see that there's 400 something of them out there says that, yes, there's a process. Now let's go look and see what their processes are. Here's how you begin to understand their processes. First, you figure out what is the title on each of those communities. That should be public record information that you can find out. If you have the address of a community, you can pull up the title and you can see the title on the land that's within that community. After you see the title, then you can understand what type of entity is holding that particular asset. That is a cheat sheet for you. Once you understand the title and what's holding that asset, now you begin to understand what type of capital is available for that type of asset. And after you understand the capital, then you begin to understand the variations in capital because capital has a cost. So you don't use capital for X to accomplish Y because the costs are usually cost prohibitive in that particular framework. So you just have a clear plan. I'm saying it doesn't, this is what you're saying. It's hard if you don't start. But if you start, the elephant can be eaten because there's 400 and something of them that have been done.
Okay. We do have a couple of comments in the chat board. Let me get to those comments, please. First, Gus is in the house. He says she's making a lot of sense. And he says further, very sobering. And I have a comment here from Moja210. That's Brother Daoudi. And greetings, Brother Keedy and LIB family. Daoudi Mahali, will be going through this with my land here in Ghana. Keedy, it is not easy here. So those are the comments. Did you want to respond to either one of the guests or Daoudi?
Sure. Yes, it's a process, everyone. And when you've gone through the process, then you understand the ingredients for this process. I'm a global real estate developer. I'm developing a portfolio of assets as we speak. I understand the process because I'm in the process. I'm living the process. So I'm not talking about something from a level of theory. I'm talking about actual practice of putting together the capital stack and getting the various commitments necessary to develop a community. In this case, the community that I've decided to develop is a portfolio of wellness resorts. All right. So that's the chosen intention of my development. But it wouldn't matter if I decided to develop assisted living community, a village. It doesn't matter what it is that I decided to develop. The foundation is the same of where I begin. First, where's the land? What is its current condition? How does it get transferred from whoever has control of it now to an entity that allows me to have some control over it? Because you must have the ability to commit legal contracts and requirements. This is why how it's held is important. You don't go through an approval process having to have 1,000 people sign off on documents. Your project won't progress. Somebody has to be allocated as the in charge for facilitating the initial phase and the subsequent phases of its evolution, right? To going from concept to completed functioning operational community. And so the structure in how you begin is important because it informs how the community becomes sustainable.
All right. We're going to begin to close out the conversation. What takeaways from today's conversation should people take away? I understand it is difficult. I want people to know I did grow up in an intentional community. There were 22 families that created their own community. We did not pursue, though, it the way that I imagine. I want to take it to the next level. So, what takeaways should people gather from today's conversation?
What I think would be important is as we begin the conversation about structure, if people would like to make their own contributions in the villages, they should begin to put themselves in some type of entity to be able to do that. Are they going to be investing as individuals and understanding if I want to invest as an individual in housing and opportunity in Ghana, what are the requirements? Let's start there. What are those requirements? How do I make an investment of my dollars that I have earned into Ghana? What would be the tax ramifications? So I need to consult with my various legal and financial advisors, right? Are there any issues as it goes to directing those funds into another country? How must I do that? How do I physically transfer those funds? Do I need to go to Ghana and set up my own banking accounts in Ghana? If I need to have a bank account in Ghana to begin to establish myself in Ghana, what is required. Am I required to have citizenship initially to set up a bank account? Or am I required to have a legal entity formed under that governmental jurisdiction to have a bank account so that I can do business by being able to transfer monies from my US accounts, presuming, to my Ghanaian accounts? So thinking about your own personal legal structures that are necessary to facilitate your ownership interest and your financial participation. I would say that's where we want to begin with our initial takeaway. And then determining before that, how do you want to participate? Are you looking to have a residence? Are you looking to have a residence and a business? Are you looking to support an educational institution? What are all those areas that you would like? Think of it as if you were going to church on Sunday and the pastor sends around the offering envelope and you get to check boxes on the offering envelope in terms of how you would like I'm putting in $100, but I want my $100, 25 allocated towards the pastor, 25 allocated towards the building fund. So this is the same type of thought process, but around this particular effort of building this village in Ghana. So that would be where I would begin, is the structuring, personal structuring, so that I could facilitate, because what you will find, and especially under this current administration, try wiring over a certain amount of money to a foreign country, and you'll realize who's paying attention to the movement of those dollars. So try to send some money to another. Every time I'm doing transactions between Ghana, between Nigeria, and just to send $300 to Nigeria, I had to go through a detailed review of how do I know this person? What is the purpose of these funds? Because somebody's watching as little as $300. Now imagine if you're transferring thousands of dollars at a time towards an effort. You must be prepared to do that. You don't just get on your Zelle and wire it. It doesn't work like that. Getting money into these developing countries is a process.
Yeah. And we do know that getting money into Africa, as well as flying to Africa, everything is stacked up against we as Africans. And that's why we do the best we can here at LIBRadio to give our people options, whether they be options about the jabs or options about whatever they should choose. The people should have options. We're going to begin to wrap it up for today. We do want to let people know that they can get in contact with you. They want to follow more with what you're doing. I do encourage people to do so. How can people best reach you, Dr. Steph?
Absolutely. So go to ZenoverseWellnessGroup.com. ZenoverseWellnessGroup.com. Join our members,
Okay.
and you'll hear about all of our brands from that location.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Final thoughts you want to share on this part 3 of this 5-part series on how to put together the financing for the Kujichagulia villages?
Absolutely. So I want you guys to take notes. I want you guys to be ready next time we join together with your notes. If you can't be live to ask your question, please send Petey a list of questions that you have. It's rare that you have an opportunity to get those questions answered. I have a wealth of experience around this particular topic, so I'm happy to answer and mitigate fears, concerns, by giving you clear, concrete answers and a direct path forward.
All right. We encourage people to do so. Thank you, Dr. Steph, for joining us today. And if you get the opportunity, please do look up intentionalcommunities.org, IC.org. And hopefully by the next time we'll talk, both of us will be more familiar with the establishment of these already existing communities.
All right.
All right, guidance and protection. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up for today. It has been a good day. It's been a great week, all week long here on LIB Radio. If you go to our Rumble page, you can see the progress that we have made broadcasting all week long here on LIB Radio. And today, while it did get a little contentious, nonetheless, you should have learned. And that's what we are really, really here to do. I don't know everything, but I do know my own life's experience. Dr. Steph doesn't know everything, but she does know her life experiences, which is why she is here with me on the Friday. So today got a little contentious. Hopefully we will progress to way beyond the contentiousness, so everything we touch will turn to gold, to platinum, to diamonds, to all of the wealth, all of the riches that we have as our potential. I want to thank you all for tuning in, reminding you this is an emergency August fund drive for LIB Radio. If you want to see LIB Radio continue, we're asking that you, if you have not, that you contribute just a little bit. You can go to the front page of libradio.com, scroll down to the bottom of that page, and you will see a number of different options to be able to contribute to us. As well, you can buy from the book catalog. In fact, get the book, Kujichagulia Villages, and look at the plan for yourself. A lot of people have looked at the plans that I put in the book, Kujichagulia Villages, and a lot of people say this can be done, and I do want to be a part of getting it done. If you don't know about it, then obviously you will not be able to contribute to it. So let's all pull together. I want to thank you, Brother Gus, for your input. I want to thank you, Brother Daudi, for your input. Daudi did say, I am in Okosambo, and he said, and he asked about Dr. Steph, is she in Ghana? And I did mention to him, she is in Kingston, Jamaica, and that we do consider Kingston, Jamaica to be part of our African diaspora. And I thank you, Daudi. Thank you, Brother Gus, for your input. Undeniably, everyone's input is necessary and vital for such an ambitious plan to go forward. You have been tuned into what we hope to be is your favorite LIB Radio, LIBTV, and livinginblack.com. If you did like today's program, let me get you to hit the like button one time. Let the algorithm know that you do appreciate having us. We do love having you in the family. And on that note, I am going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been a good week here on LIB Radio. Normally on Saturday mornings, I do the Living Superfood Family Reunion, but I'll be honest with you, I need a break right now. I need a break from it. And we are going to be working on some new ideas for bringing in what's necessary to keep our operation going. And if the Living Superfood Family Reunion isn't doing it, even though it was free, it was offered free to anyone who would want to join. If that is not doing it, then I'm not going to continue doing that. Where they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So I'm going to take Saturday morning off. For the first time in a long time, I'm going to enjoy myself. And I want you to enjoy yourself. Every moment that you are listening to LIB Radio, you are building toward a future. Peace and prosperity, we say to each and every one of you on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livinginblack.com. Peace, y'all.